This video is sponsored by Creative Live.
Breaking news. Portrait photographer Miguel Quiles exposed in lies.
According to our anonymous source, Miguel Quiles is accused of saying that he's shooting portraits with one light when in fact he's shooting with several lights. Here's the video that our source sent us.
I saw the title and the thumbnail, and I just knew Miguel was being misleading. I didn't watch the video, but I did read comments.
There you have it, Tony. They said that they did not watch the video, but they did read the title, look at the thumbnail, which must have more than one light, and also read the comments. I think it's pretty clear that Miguel has some explaining to do.
I'm not going to watch the video, but I already didn't like Miguel, so this feels right to me.
We're going on the scene right now with our correspondent to talk to Miguel and get some answers.
Miguel.
Yeah, what's up?
What do you have to say about the allegations about you misleading photographers?
All right, listen, I'm going to answer all of your questions, all right? What's that over there?
Holy shit, that dog is fast! Wow, Miguel Quiles is a liar, but he is fast.
Very fast, and in fact I find it concerning. Why is he so fast? I really want to know more answers from Miguel. He's like a cheetah or Usain Bolt or some kind of Olympian. I just don't trust this at all. We're going to continue to cover this story as new information comes to light, so stay tuned as we find out who Miguel Quiles really is.
And remember, be careful and stay safe from the great threat of clickbait.
Okay, let's get serious here for a second because there is something here that we have to talk about. There is a problem that a lot of off-camera flash photographers are running into, and big thanks to Tony and Chelsea, by the way, for this intro because I think it's hilarious. But what this video stems from is a comment that was left on a video where I did a one light shoot, and in that one light shoot, in any of my one light shoots, when I'm shooting in the studio, you're gonna see multiple lights within the frame. You might see one, you might see three. And so the natural question is, well, Miguel, you said this is a one light photo shoot, but I see 2, 3, 4 lights. What gives? And that's where these comments were coming from. It was like I was lying to them that I really was shooting with multiple lights when I say I'm shooting with one, and it's not the case. This is something a lot of photographers run into, and I even see YouTubers who create content here on YouTube that are misunderstanding this simple principle. So what I want to do in this video is I'm going to share with you exactly what the relationship is between your camera settings, your LED lights if you're lighting something in a studio, and your strobe lights, and kind of talk about some things that you will inevitably run into if you shoot with off-camera flash. Okay, so I'm here in the same exact spot in my studio, and obviously it looks a lot different than what you just saw a few moments ago. Normally when I shoot a video tutorial, a photography tutorial, I turn off the lights in the room, and you might be wondering why. Well, compare what you're seeing right now to what you were just watching, and that's the difference between shooting with these lights that are the overhead lights in the studio versus shooting with a big soft light, big soft box to light myself, to light the area that I'm shooting. So first things first, when we're shooting video tutorials like this, we end up having to turn off the lights in the room and add supplemental LED lights. So when you watch a one light tutorial on my channel, on someone else's channel, and they're shooting in a studio environment, those lights that you're seeing are specifically there for you as the viewer, right? It is lighting the video. Now, strange things happen when you're trying to take a photo in that environment. So what we're gonna do next is I wanna show you guys, we're gonna turn the overhead lights back off, turn this LED back on so that hopefully our video gets back to looking good, and then we'll talk about the photography side of things. Okay, so the LED lights in the room are back on, and this is with the overhead lights in the studio turned off. So this is the first thing, right? We're gonna layer this thing up because it's a very complex topic, right? So the first thing is for the videos. Now, obviously, if you're a photographer, you wanna do a one light photo shoot in your own environment, you won't have to worry about these LED lights. But now you guys are a lot smarter than like 99% of the people that are watching YouTube tutorials because you understand the LED light that you're seeing This is specifically to light the subject, it's to light the environment for the purposes of the video. So right now, we're shooting at a 50th of a second at around f2.8 on the video camera. My camera settings are gonna be a lot different. So let's talk about the camera settings. But first and foremost, we're gonna give you a quick little look at the lighting that we have, just so that you can take a look and you can see what that looks like. The softbox that I'm using to light myself in this scenario right now, this is a very large parabolic softbox that has an LED connected to it. So again, that's the video. And then for my stills, I have a similar shaped parabolic modifier. And you'll notice if you see these side by side, it'll make a little bit more sense. You have kind of a yellowish color here, and then you have kind of a bluish, whitish color coming from this light. So what people don't usually get is that you have to set the white balance in your camera, and you can only set one value to get proper white balance in your camera. So for example, if I set my white balance based on this yellow color, then if I shoot with a daylight color, which all strobes, all speed lights, if they haven't been modified, they're gonna put out a daylight color, which is gonna be something more akin to the color that you're seeing here. So what ends up happening is, if you have a flash or you have an LED light that's putting out this yellow color, and then you light with a daylight flash, and those two mix together, your skin tones are gonna be messed up. So what I've noticed is that a lot of people will end up getting really bad skin tones in their portraits. And part of that is because they're inviting too much of the room lights. For example, in this case, it's an LED, but let's say if I left the overhead lights on, or let's say if you were shooting next to a window, any light that's hitting your environment, it all needs to be the same color temperature if you're gonna try to blend it all together, or else your skin tones are going to be affected. Now, there is a way to overcome this, and I'm gonna show you how to do that. Let me jump in here really quick and ask you a question. Besides YouTube, where do you go to learn new skills? Back when I started, one of the major resources that got me to where I am today is Creative Live, which happens to be the sponsor of today's video. Creative Live is an online platform that offers more than 2,000 on-demand classes for photographers, entrepreneurs, designers, and creatives of all kinds. Some of their instructors include Pulitzer Prize winners, cultural icons, and you'll even find my Powerful Portraits Using Mirrorless Cameras course in its entirety, where I share my techniques for shooting and retouching portraits. Creative Live has a massive library of amazing instructors like Lindsay Adler, Joe McNally, Joey L., Brooke Shaden, and many others that teach you step by step how to create amazing images. I'm here today doing what I love because of the education that the Creative Live platform offers, and now it's your turn to learn from the comfort of your own home. Check out the link in the description of this video to save $10 on your subscription. Big thanks to Creative Live for sponsoring this video, and now let's get back to the video. So let's talk about shooting, and let's talk about how we address this situation of white balance and exposure in the studio. What I want to do is I'm going to bring my model AnnaGrace, come on over, and I'm going to have you stand, let's say right here. So I've turned off the modeling light on the strobe, and I just have the LED light on right now. This LED light, again, is primarily for you guys as the viewers so that you have video that looks decent to watch. But now we're actually going to start shooting. So the first thing that you have to make sure of is that your camera settings have to underexpose your environment. It has to underexpose if you're shooting in a home, in a studio, whatever the case might be. Because ultimately, for a one light photo shoot to work, you just need the one light, right? And we have two right now. We have the LED light and we have the strobe. So how do we do that? Now, very, very simple to do. First things first, your ISO value when you're setting up your camera, you want it to be the lowest that you could possibly get it to. For some cameras, it could be ISO 100. Other cameras, it might be ISO 200. Put it to whatever the lowest ISO value is for your specific camera. I'm gonna be shooting with the Alpha 1. I'm gonna bring it down to ISO 100 because that's gonna give us the cleanest possible studio images. The next thing is the shutter speed. Now, usually for shutter speed, you have to work with the sync limit of your strobe, and that's dictated on your camera. Some cameras, the maximum might be 1/160, 1/200, 1/250. In the case of this Alpha 1, it goes up to like 1/400, which is not normal, but that's why you spend $6,500 on the camera. But usually 160 to 1/250, that's kind of the ballpark to be able to get your flash and your camera to talk the same language. So that's pretty much set, right? The ISO of 100, my shutter speed of 1/160, those two values are basically locked in before I even put the camera up to my face to take a photograph. What we have to manage is the aperture. So that aperture value, if you're used to shooting daylight, natural light, available light, whatever you want to call it, you might be using those wide open apertures, f1.4, f1.8. But when you try to do that in the studio with these settings, you're going to invite the light that's in the room to expose part of the image, and you don't want to do that. The goal is going to be that we get rid of all of the light that's lighting us right now. And the only way to be able to do that is to increase your f-stops. Maybe it might be f5.6. We're going to test it here in a second. Maybe it might be f8. Generally speaking, my recipe when I'm doing studio photography is I will have it at f8 to start off with. And 9 times out of 10, that's the exposure it needs to be at. So we're going to test it out. So the first step that we're going to do before we take our photograph is that even though my strobe is turned on, my remote is turned off. So I've dialed in 1/160 for my shutter, ISO 100 and f8, because I told you if you go to f8, 9 times out of 10, that's going to be the exposure that underexposes your ambient light, which means this LED light, hopefully if I take this photograph at those settings, you're not going to see anything. So I'm going to test this out. Because I have live view, I could actually just see on the back of my screen that it's pure black. So I know these settings are going to work, but I'm just going to take this image anyway. And I'm going to put this image on the screen for you to see it. You're going to notice that there's no image there. It's just a pure black image. So at f8, 1/160th of a second, ISO 100, this LED light, which is exposing me and exposing the model and exposing this situation for the purposes of the video, is doing nothing for my photograph. Now, what I do see people do is they'll shoot at, let's say, f3.5 or something to that effect, where now, yes, some of that LED light might be exposing the model or exposing your subject, and then you turn on your strobe, and you better hope that those color temperatures match, because if they don't, skin tones are gonna be messed up. So don't do it that way. Now I'm gonna go ahead and turn on my flash, and at this point, my camera settings do not change. From this point forward, she can change outfits, she could do whatever she wants. This light could move, it can go in and out, to the left, to the right. This is gonna be the only light that is going to light any of these exposures. And that's really helpful, because if I don't like the way it looks from the left, no big deal. Just move the light to the right or move it above, like put it behind them. That light is gonna be the only light that we have to contend with. So I haven't finessed it. I literally just rolled it into the scene. I don't know where she needs to be. I don't know where the light needs to be. So we're gonna try to figure that out. So as I start to take these photographs here, again, the camera settings aren't gonna change. This light, this big light, is the only thing that's lighting these portraits. Now, in this case, it actually worked out really well. These images that I'm taking look perfectly acceptable to me in the camera. However, if I wanted to change the direction of the light, if I wanted to make it more intense, all I would have to do is adjust the light itself. I don't have to make any adjustments to the camera settings. I literally will just dial up the power or change the modifier or bring it closer or farther away, and that's going to adjust the photograph. Now, there is a really important thing. So we talked about the white balance issue and how that could damage your skin tones if you're mixing the ambient light or you're mixing these LEDs with a strobe, and if it's different white balances, the skin tones are gonna be destroyed. But there's another really interesting problem. And I only learned this within the last maybe 6 or 7 years, and I still see photographers messing with this all the time. So if you're shooting in a studio environment, even if you're not shooting a video like I'm shooting now, you may want to consider having an LED light on in the room for one reason and one reason only, and that is the pupils of the subject. So what we're gonna do is, I want to show you guys with the LED on in the studio, you're gonna notice that AnnaGrace, her eyes, her pupils are a normal standard size, right? You can see the color of her eyes, her pupil is of normal size. However, if I was to shoot with the modeling light of the strobe and I turn off this LED, I wanna show you what happens. So you're gonna notice with the modeling light from the strobe and with the LEDs turned off, that the environment that we're shooting in is much darker. And because of that, AnnaGrace's pupils are going to open up so that she could see. And the problem with that is if I were to take her photograph, and this happens all the time, you can see this if you look at portraits on Instagram, you see this all the time where you see people with their pupils like super dilated. And the reason for that is that they're shooting in an environment that the ambient exposure is just very low, like it's too dark in the room. So an easy way to be able to alleviate that problem is to have something like an LED light, something a little bit brighter than the modeling light that's on the strobe, so that those pupils will close down a little bit so you can see all the colors that make up the human eye. The next time that you see a studio photography tutorial where they're shooting with one light and you see multiple LEDs in the room, now you are the smartest photographer in the room, because now you know that those LED lights are not specifically lighting the exposure of the image, but they're doing some really important things. So hopefully that was helpful for you guys. If it was, please leave a like on the video and comment if you have any questions, something that maybe wasn't too clear. Try to do this a little bit differently than I do my normal videos, so hopefully I covered it like to death. But if there's any questions, leave them in the comment section below. And while you're down there, AnnaGrace, follow her on Instagram, check out her work. She's got fantastic work. So big thanks for joining me for this tutorial.
Having me.
Always good to have you. And so if you guys want to learn a little bit more about studio photography, what I want you to do is to check out this video that you see here on the screen. I think this is another super important topic that will help you to take your off-camera flash game to the next level. See you there.